Okay.
So we are recording. Okay,
Okay. So,
here we
uh, oh, good thing.
He
Oh no.
he should be fine. Yeah, go ahead, Tommy.
Yeah. So I'm going to share a link in the chat, and if you have not done so yet, please take a look at the. If I could make sure I can find everything here. I want to hide this guy, and if you can basically try to fill that out, it takes about a minute, and it will be part of the demo today. Yeah, so it's been a weird week with technology, right? So on Tuesday for our podcast, every time Mike started his streaming service, it crashed his computers. And then yesterday in Chicago, the north central region for Power BI was down, which included gateways, which we use extensively for Power Apps, which there's no going around it. So it was quite the week of technology not doing really what it should. So let's kind of dive in. And like Ed said, my name's Tommy Puglia, lead the Chicago Power BI user group. I've been doing that since 2019. Before that, I led the Tampa Power BI user group, and originally from New York, so still a very, very much diehard Yankee fan. Even though there may not be baseball this year, we'll see. So I work at CompTIA here in Chicago, and basically my job is how do we integrate, automate, and analyze data? How do we get people to, rather than just asking for a report, but understanding what it can do for them? So making sure that people don't see the data as the end, it's a means to another end, and trying to align objectives, work being done towards data that we can actually show. So on top of that, with all the training, I do side training on the side of consulting. It's something I've been doing for a while. I love being in the Power BI space. Been in it since I was Power BI designer. So it's a bit of a nerdy thing. And I've been honored to be a Microsoft MVP since 2019, which is just part of the being able to meet people like Ed, all the different user group opportunities. So it's been a lot of fun. So if you like today's session, but just wish I spoke a lot less, then there's a thing for you. And Ed kind of referred to this. There's a new Power BI podcast out there, and it's definitely a different take when you think about what a Power BI podcast would talk about. We actually started this, Mike Carlo and Seth Bauer from Power BI Tips, honestly, because online for Power BI, if we are all learners, we know how to do something. And, if we don't know how, we can learn how. So a lot of all the content, documentation, blogs, articles, videos is how do you build a bookmark? How do you do a drill through, which is great. And that's obviously how we all learned. But one thing that Mike and Seth and I noticed after user group meetings and just conversations was, even if there's the best practice, let's say with a DAX measure for year to date, there's a lot of things that we disagreed on. And like, why aren't people using reports? Like, how come people are exporting data? What is the best process to implement in a company for development to production? So the kind of like the ambiguous stuff that if you worked in Power BI for more than 30 days, you probably felt that you might have built a great report that you were really proud of and nobody used it. So those kind of things that are the more the gray area, we call it the Power BI water cooler. And we do it every Tuesday and Thursday. Subscribe on Apple and Spotify, join the conversation. Like I said, we really don't think there's anything out there like it, even though we know all these conversations are happening. Right. They're just not online. So yeah, so that's about me. Let's kind of get into the meat of it today. So what are we talking about today? Why are we getting,
before you get started, are you okay with questions during your presentation, or do you prefer we wait till the end? What kind of presenter are you?
So I have like 3 different spots where I'll pause for questions.
Perfect. So we'll wait for those. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll just, I kind of break it up just so we make sure there's questions along the way. So cool. Awesome. So let's kind of dive right into it. And the link that I sent, again, that takes less than a minute, does ask they have you used forms or goals in Power BI, the scorecard feature, not just use it, but are you even using in your organization? So a little background today on this feature that has not gotten the love I think it really deserves. So just a quick background, if you've never heard of this at all, Power BI goals and scorecards are something that was announced at the Microsoft Business Applications Summit in 2021. It was one of their major parts of the keynote. And what it allows you to do is really take a current value versus a target value for a particular, call it a goal, and you can connect to any data point in your Power BI tenant. So if you always really wanted to track that one state in your bar chart in one of your reports and just to see how it does over time, you can do so. And it's all dynamic. So what it allows you to do is consolidate all the most important numbers and also to actually compare it automatically for you. So part of it is kind of aligning and, really kind of creating that one true view of what's important for the company and doing that true narrative. And they've also released a lot of features in the last few months over automation with Power Automate, which we'll kind of walk into as well. And then also they're planning a lot in the roadmap if you haven't seen the release wave. So a few kind of background items or components that we'll just talk about and we will show during the demo. Every scorecard is made up of goals, and every goal has a few fields or components. There's a current value, something you can manually set, or again, it could be dynamic from a Power BI report. The target value, what you're comparing against. And again, that can also be manual or a dynamic from a different report. You can set a due date. Usually the best objectives and goals do have a set time frame. And then the idea of statuses where you basically say, hey, we're on track, we're behind. And now with the ability to actually do dynamic statuses. So a few things you can connect again to any data in your Power BI tenant you have access to. There are so many ways to trigger or update a goal using Power Automate. And again, that dynamic statuses. So just kind of idea of where does it fit in the ecosystem. You basically can really push data into a scorecard, which does create a data set, either from obviously connecting from a Power BI report, or obviously with Power Automate, you can pull from SQL, SharePoint, any of the data is coming from Automate, push that and actually update a goal value in Power BI. To me, this is huge because just the idea that we know that some of the data does not live in a report, or it's not structured in a way where it's simply the marketing team wanting to update how many campaigns they've run, right? So that might not actually be in a data set, but it's important. So the idea with goals too is it can be the one place where everyone's going to actually see where are we meeting on track, not just a report. And then that output, again, with Power Automate, what we can do is we can actually then trigger, like when a goal updates, push into Dataverse, push into the SharePoint list, email somebody, and be much more proactive with our ability to kind of communicate on metrics. Now, the conversation today and the title was, let me sell you on goals. And you're probably wondering, this sounds pretty great. Why do I need to be sold? So unfortunately, I think in the last almost year now, goals have not received the love that I think they should by the community. If you've never heard about it, it's because really no one's been talking about it. The only person that I know of that's actually written a blog article or is Marquee Insights. Mike Carlo and myself on Power BI Tips just started a series on YouTube for using goals and different things to do. But besides that, there's not really anyone creating amazing blog articles on examples of a scorecard or features it can do, or the samples, because I think a lot of us are reverse engineers at heart, where we need to tinker with something, see how someone did it, and then we kind of understand it more. Also, so there's been much lack of engagement, and it's kind of hard again to get started. Also, goals definitely behave differently than most other things in Power BI, and we'll kind of talk about it. And again, unlike other things where you kind of set it and it's ready to go, goals take a little more planning, even though it's not necessarily seen that way. So let's kind of dive into that. And then if there's any questions, we'll ask it. So why aren't we not talking about goals? I mean, our job, and I think the thing that we all struggle with the most or get frustrated the most is people requesting for reports that they're not making decisions off of, or they're exporting into Excel, or it's nothing that's actually making them behave in a different way. It's just, well, I just wanted to see the sales by region. Okay. And you just wanted that in a map visual because it's nice to look at. So, and the idea of like what our role is and what our job is when we're really providing value as a Power BI and report authors and analysts is to help them understand, should they keep working as hard as they are in certain areas? Are we spending the money in the right places? So goals make perfect sense, but the thing again is no one's talked about it. And I think it's because it's a little confusing. The biggest part is, unlike data sets, reports, dashboards, apps, where there's kind of a narrative you would understand from a business where obviously you go to the app to view the report. When you see the goals for the first time, it's kind of uncertain where it actually fits in the platform. Basically, like, do you go from a report to the goal? Do you go from the goal always to a report? What if you don't have a scorecard? So that there's a lot more ambiguity around scorecards than a lot of the other features in Power BI. So what's its purpose? So I'm going to call it the true dashboard. Chuck Sterling, who some of you may know or heard of, he told me when I first met him back in 2017 that he wanted to deprecate. He was a product manager of Power BI at the time, and he was trying to basically deprecate the dashboard feature. And at the time, that scared the heck out of me because we were always using dashboards. But when I don't know how many everyone on the call uses dashboards extensively, but we've moved away from it a while ago just because it's not really what a dashboard's supposed to do. Yes, it's kind of neat to pin visuals from a report, but from the consumer point of view, they're looking at a line chart, they click and there's a line chart again. That dashboard should really be that, hey, how are we doing? Yes, no, good or not? What should you focus on? So to me, these scorecards are really the true dashboard and should take the place of dashboards. One of the most profound things I've ever heard, just not necessarily in all of life, but something that's always stuck out to me. I'll never forget watching Steve Jobs announce the iPad for the first time. And it was the keynote. And he didn't just say, hey, we have a tablet. He kind of obviously built it up. It's pretty neat. I think it was 2010. But he kind of explained that if we're going to release something to the Apple product line that's completely new, well, it has to serve a better purpose and be better at some things than our current devices and products are now. For example, if we're, it should be better at browsing the web than the iPhone, and it should be better at browsing, watching movies than the computer. If we release a product that it's not better than anything in some capacities, then it has no reason to be. I've always thought that really stuck out to me. And I think with scorecards, there's absolutely that purpose where they're better than a dashboard to highlight your top level numbers. And they're better than a report to, and again, be an easy access into, are we tracking towards our efforts? But a lot of it goes into the design beforehand. So just a few things on success, and then we'll take some questions. Again, unlike Power BI, where the whole clicky, draggy, droppy, or 5 minutes to wow, it's pretty simple, even if you've never used it, to create a few visuals from just an Excel set and go, wow, that's actually great. With scorecards, there's a lot more planning that needs to be involved. Not that you can't set it up without planning, because it's super easy to create a goal, connect to a Power BI report. It's one of the simpler things you can do. That being said, the actual impact of it and what it actually provides, it kind of comes from, does your company even have goals? When the scorecard feature first came out, I was absolutely stoked about it. And I started creating these random goals. Then I'm looking at it, it just looks very convoluted, confusing, and didn't help at all. So kind of put it on the back burner. But again, that's because if you're not really reporting towards something that needs to be monitored, that either on a weekly, monthly, or even quarterly basis, scorecards are really not going to solve everything for you. So it's that designing of, do I even have the right reports, and are my reports structured in a way? And we'll kind of go through why that is too, because if you don't have any target numbers, something that reports actually again trying to showcase, the goal is not going to magically generate that for you. And then part of that too, that education with users where, we are going to be tracking against something, and adding a few things in goals to actually help users kind of say, what am I looking at? So at this point, I've talked a lot, and then we'll get to the demo. Does anyone have any questions? All right. Left them
Yeah, I
speechless.
don't see anything in the chat right now, so I think we're good.
Okay, perfect. So I do have the chat box up. So if you want to ask any questions, you can do so in there. So a few things on just creating goals for business that's going to help, and then we'll go right into the demo. Yeah, Ted, you can absolutely ask something over voice.
So I think Ted has a question. Ted, you can unmute and ask the question if you have.
All right, thanks. Yeah, I figured it'd be easier for me just to say it than to try and type it out. I'm not currently on the reporting team. I work alongside them.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I've tried to nudge people, but maybe mostly unsuccessfully, but it's sort of like, if you have this report dashboard and it's got numbers on it, you can ask the person who gets this report, like, what's the first thing you do when you open this? Like, if the first thing you do is you say, I look to see, is this number bigger than it was yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
Or I divide these two numbers. Is that along the lines of, like, in terms of like, hey, yeah, this is how this person is making a red light, green light decision on data?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. No, and Ted, that's a perfect question, but that's exactly online, I think, where this is the impact, because a lot of times we create a report and we all learn from the documentation, sales year to date versus previous year. Well, when you're in June, even now, like, if it's not going to change that much in 1 week, where it's going to cause someone to jump out of their chair, right? Or to kind of say like, oh, something's different here. But to exactly your point, that's kind of like, again, maybe not necessarily the point of a year-to-date measure, but the goals and scorecards saying like, we want to be over 75% efficiency, and I need to make sure of that over a weekly or daily basis. Or we need, like, our goal is to be 10% year over year from last year. How are we trending towards that right now? And having a high level view of that, then I can have a report that explains it and shows me, okay, it's this product line, or, there's a few people from sales that need to make a few more calls. But no, you're exactly right. And what goals do is actually begin to track, every day, basically, like what the status was, like how many times have you been over, how many times have you been at risk. So, you're absolutely on point.
All right, thanks, appreciate it.
No problem. Any other questions? All righty. So just a few things on where to start, and then we'll jump right into the demo. So basically, where do we need to start? And again, this is not just a feature and something that we can do alone. It really depends, and it's going to be a collaborative effort between us and the business to create things that are going to be impactful. Because again, I can spend hours building an awesome designed report myself, but with goals, if you don't have the understanding of what we're trying to measure towards, what our decisions need to be made on, or are we meeting our objectives, goals are, again, either not going to work at all or you can't really go forward with it. So this is something that actually requires you to work with stakeholders, with the company. What are your company or department level goals for the quarter or year? And then can we actually create the scorecard from there? Also, if you want to begin to adopt goals at your organization, once you get a handle on it, use the scorecard in your report scoping, saying, okay, you asked for this. Now, here's a feature in Power BI called scorecards that allows us to basically track things and basically say if you're 5% over. So just wondering, do you have anything in, for the next 3 months that you're looking at? And kind of lining it that way to show, like, we can show you those high level numbers and then have the report explain it. And again, part of this too is getting people to think in a different way, where if marketing or sales is calling 1,000 people, well, is that been efficient? Are they calling the right people? All these different things. And there's a really great book out there called Measure What Matters. And it's just about the idea of OKRs, which I absolutely love. And it's objective and key results. So one of the arguments is we always talk about KPIs, but a KPI without a goal or an objective, I think in the book it says, is a soulless number, which is very true, because if you're just looking, we always call like sales year to date a KPI. Well, what's it indicating? So part of this too is kind of a culture change. We're not going to get into that as a demo today, but there's an idea here that I highly encourage you guys to think about. So let's dive into the demo. What we're going to do today is we're going to look at one that's already built. We're going to create a new one, see the features, and we're going to see what we can do with Power Automate. Few things that I've seen to work as of right now better than other features is any objective that you're kind of tracking. Like again, if you're looking at, like, we need to have 75% of our products shipped on time. So kind of something with a targeted static number can be really impactful. Anything that's more percentage based, again, if you're looking at year to date towards what your annual goal is, it makes it a little difficult unless you have a forecast in there. You can't add a tooltip. So if you're like, hey, we're not even close to our yearly goal, well, obviously we're in February. So, and again, the only feature that I'm hoping Microsoft updates soon that really I think is the barrier is the target. If it's based on a report, you don't know what it was previously. The current, you can see the historical target moves. So those are a few things that just to think about in terms of when you're setting up goals, what metrics to focus on. So let's kind of dive in and let's do a demo. So I'm going to pull up Power BI on my browser. And what I'm going to do is, if you have not seen yet, hold on one second, just got a window up. So if you have not seen yet, on the left-hand side of the Power BI, and again, this used to be a premium only feature, but now it's available for anyone with Pro, which is probably everyone. There's a little goals icon. And what we can do is we're just going to click on here, and that's going to basically bring up for you your scorecards. And again, you may not have any scorecards. So what you'll see is a list of all these samples here. That looks like this. So you can kind of see ideas of what Microsoft's providing. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go into one of my initial scorecards that I have already set up using a few Power BI reports. And let's kind of break down what we're looking at here. So again, for those keen of eye, what you can actually do in a scorecard is add in a goal sub goals, which is a really awesome feature, especially when you're wanting to look at different regions. Again, it helps kind of cascade what's important. What I can see here is I have 5 main goals that I'm tracking: my sales margin, products with profit, and a year to date, year over year. And again, what I can see here is just a few items here. I can see basically the value versus the target value. And again, this is pretty straightforward, but again, for some especially executive or even your metrics to say, are we meeting or are we not? This provides a very straightforward, quick view. And then what we also have is our statuses and progress. So the status here is all based dynamically that you can configure to basically say if the current value is 100% over the target, then obviously we're on track. And then you can customize it really how you need to. And then there's this progress, this line chart. So even if you're connecting to a data point in Power BI that's, let's say, like a card, once you create a scorecard, it actually creates a data set. So what I can see here is, again, this particular goal is what is my current sales for the last 30 days versus the previous 3 months. And I can actually see here, since I've created this, when I click, I kind of get a few pieces of information for me. And I can see that, okay, so 3 months average was about $500,000. And what I can see here is we're drastically lower than we were. Because I've set this up before, there's this history icon on the top, and I can actually see the different changes. So again, if some of you may think, I don't want to really track everything on a daily basis, we can actually set it up that way where you can do things where it updates on a monthly basis. But I can actually see like we were doing well, but have been falling, kind of been a little spotty over the last, let's say like last 5 days, we've gone behind. So again, looking at a different one, my product margin, again, what I can do once I click on it, this one, you'll actually see it's showing a lot more of the data. It's actually throwing since 2015, and I'll show you exactly why that is. And I can see, again, just that high level overview. Again, the numbers that seem to work the best are things where it's percentage based. I don't know why it just looks a little better, or at least things that are maybe more indexed, maybe your own, in a sense, a weighted score. So again, I have this products with profit number. I started tracking it in a Power BI report on December 29th. So that's when basically the goal started. And I can basically see where we've been, see we've really been on track. Okay, great. So this is great. But now let's say, for example, for the sales margin, like what did happen in the last previous 3 months that made us go so behind? Some of you also may have noticed when I actually hover over some of the visuals or the scorecards, there is this report icon, which tells the user that, hey, this goal is connected to a Power BI report. So let's do that. So I'm going to click on here, and what that's going to do is open up the report it's connected to. And not only that, but it's going to highlight for me which visual is connected to. So this is really neat too, from a reference point of view, where you're saying, hey, you're behind. This is what we are referring to. And your goal works basically exactly like personal bookmarks or comments do, where it remembers the state that you connected to your data point in, which can be really impactful for a user to, again, really kind of create a narrative for them where if I want to know why we're down over the last 3 months, now I can begin to easily dive into that. And then there's the automated insights feature that will pop up that can sometimes be helpful, but it's one of those things that I'm not going to promote that widely with users and say, this will help you. For example, some of these seem to be really great. Others of these, not so much if we actually look at this. So yeah, doesn't help too much. So I think I don't know if you can disable it within the goal. I know you can do it for a report. So again, what I can do is the filters are there. I can basically see my report here. So let's go back, and this report is really neat because everything is based on this slicer. So everything's a rolling average based on the slicer that I select. So right now, if I want to look at the last 3 months, I can see my sales margin. I can see my like my sales period over period, everything based on this dynamic period. So important to learn as we do the demo. So let's kind of go back in. And So again, there's also these sub goals in here. So one of these here is looking at is this, I have this bike sales margin, which is actually looking at the current month versus the previous 3 months. So the same idea as this guy, but just also wanting to try to look at bikes. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to go over to this sub goal, and I can again go into it, see when I started tracking it, kind of see what this performance. But again, that ability, I'm going to click on that report, that particular sub goal. And you'll notice it's the same report, but now everything's being filtered on for bikes. And I can see when I hover over that bikes are included. And it's that, again, I'm looking at the current value. So right away, a user would get the report in the view that they would need it. If you're looking at, again, baseball bats being sold, obviously the report will be pre-filtered based on when you connect it to it. So the user doesn't have to do an additional clicking. And it's already ready to go to show me what are happening for bikes. The sales I can see based on the regions. I can see, you know, if I want to kind of drill into different components, depending on how I may lay out the report. Now the user doesn't have to worry about what to click on to get what they need. So the other powerful feature of scorecards is it's not just one report or one workspace. So I have this product margin here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to go in again to one of these that I have set up, this Van R sales 6-month period over period. And this is actually coming from a different report, which could also be in a completely different tenant. So again, you can see here that in this, when I click on this, that it's actually showing me what's being filtered. So with the spotlight visual, it's actually already being pre-filtered for what I needed. It's a different report. Again, even if it's in a completely different workspace, there's no power, the data sets work totally fine. So now you can kind of consolidate some of the most important metrics with some of the filters that you need to do. So again, we'll show one more example of that. What I'll do is I'll go to the products with profit here, and you can see I actually have a few of here. I'm looking at the current month, period over period, 3 months versus the previous 6 months, and 6 months versus the 12 months. So again, all these are kind of pre-filtered, pre-set up. And you'll notice that the slicer on the top left has already been selected for me. So I can see that initially the default value was the current month, but based on what I did, now it's showing me everything for that 6-month period. So different ways to look at the numbers. So again, some of these metrics, just the ability to begin to actually dive in and think about the potential of, rather than creating a report that's very general, you can actually create certain pages that allow for the layout just to help explain for someone when they go into the scorecard. So again, you're creating that narrative where if I know I'm looking at different regions, when they go to the goal, it's basically going to give them a smart narrative. It's going to give them the most important ones that are have the worst variance over the last whatever time frame you're looking at, and it's that explainer tool in a really neat way. So let's look how easy it is to create a scorecard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go to my goals, and in the scorecard feature, and in the top right, I'm going to click on new scorecard, and we'll call this the OC scorecard. And you just got to choose a workspace. So we'll choose Chicago Pug, and we'll just create. Once we do that, we have a blank canvas. Start tracking your goals today. Pretty ambiguous. So all we have to do is click on new goal, and we're going to say, let's just do a rolling average of sales. And what I'm going to do is we'll connect to a line chart, and we'll see the different options available here. So now I add the name here, and you'll notice on the current and target, it says either enter a value or connect to data. So again, this is part of that where I will definitely, John does ask, what's the mobile experience like? I think it's better than the web experience. So Microsoft hit it out of the park with what goals can do on a mobile app. So It's just something I actually look at more, where I'm creating different goal scorecards for my most important reports. So I don't have to go to the reports on my app. So yeah, a huge feature there, huge win. So again, if you don't have people who have data that's directly in a Power BI report, I think someone has their hand up. Nope. Okay. So people can all contribute to the alignment all in the Power BI platform. So let's connect to data. When I click on connect, what it's going to do is bring up to me every report I have access to. And I can see my favorites, I can see shared with me, and I can see even through my apps or all my reports. So I'm going to do my favorites. I'm just going to select the report. And what's going to happen is going to bring up the canvas for me. So pretty straightforward. And what I'm going to do is right now you can see I have on my top right, I have the slicer, which is affecting all the metrics for the rolling average, default to 6. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move this to 1. So I want to look at the current month. And what I want to do is I'm just going to simply click on this card on the top here, this products with profit. And when I do that, you'll actually see that Power BI is telling me, hey, this is what's affecting what you selected. The rolling months is 1, so current month. And here's the value that we're going to show. Cool. So once we have that, the current value in the bottom right, we're just going to connect the data. And we've just connected to our current value. Let's connect to the target. We'll say connect the data again. Choose the same report. You could technically choose a different report. Don't know how that would work out. And again, this I want to be 3 months. So my current month versus the average of 3 months. So I'm going to just choose the slicer on the top left. Now I have my products with profits for 3 months rolling average. And let's click on connect to data. Now I have my current and target. And now the last thing I want to set up is my rules. So right over here, set up rules. And now basically we can create our, in a sense, order of precedence of what do we want to display. So what I'm going to do is click on new rule, and simply value is greater than 100% of the target. Let's say, we'll say we're on track. So again, since I have a dynamic target, I don't want to necessarily set anything that would be too drastic. But what I could do is, even though we are tracking versus my target, this is something that should always be optimized and should at least always be over 85%. So what I'm going to do is create another rule, and I'm going to drag that, keep it here. And I'm just going to say static number is 0.85. I'll still say if it's greater than that, we're still doing well, even if we're below. Create a new rule. If the value is greater than, let's say 85% of target, or let's say 85% of the target, not necessarily 85%, then we'll say we're at risk. Otherwise, we are behind. We have this set up, and all we have to do is click on save. So it's going to show me again, we're on track. Great. And the goal starts as of the day you connect to it. So again, there's not a lot of history. The last thing we can do for those who were probably wondering is some of these numbers don't make sense to compare every day. So what we can actually do in our settings is set the tracking cycle. So basically say like, when do we want to compare against the target? So I can say daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, or yearly. So you can always say on the start of the month, that's when we want to update to see what the current goal value is. So in this case, I want to keep it daily because I always want to see how I am versus the previous rolling 3 months. So let's do one that we're actually going to look at and show kind of the neat features of Power BI, because I know we're nearly at time already. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to click on new goal. And what we're going to do is we're going to call this bikes sales margin rolling average. And what I'm going to do here, actually, just to make sure that you guys were wondering, this is products. All right, so we got that. So our bike sales margin rolling average. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click on connected data, and we're going to go to the same report. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to showcase all those different features with everything in Power BI to help create a narrative. So I'm going to choose bikes here. I'm going to right click, and you'll notice anytime you click on anything on the visual, it's going to pop up what you're looking at. So some of you also may notice another really amazing feature is this particular visual has a lot of tooltips. Power BI knows that. And what it's actually showing me is I can actually choose to connect any of the tooltips. It doesn't have to be the primary data label that's showing the bar chart. So if I want to actually create a goal based on a tooltip, you could. So in this case, I'm not actually wanting to do that at all here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on bikes, and I'm going to click drill through. So I can actually even do drill through here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill through page. And again, I wanted to look at the sales rolling average. And I want to look at this based on the current 6 months. So what I'm going to do is in the bottom left, I'm going to click on the line chart. And what you'll notice now is, again, it's giving that a drop down because there's more than one visual here. But you're also notice it's showing me this latest value, and it's giving me a toggle to say, track all the data points in the series or start today. So this is another neat way if you're behind on having your goal set up, where it's actually going to know all the historical value, both for your current and your target, and that will show up in the goal. So we'll say, yeah, let's track all the data points in this series. So we'll go here. We'll say our sales margin dynamic rolling average. I'm making sure it's bikes and that it's 6 months. We'll say connect. And then let's do one more. We're going to connect the data. Same report. We'll choose bikes, drill through. And again, this is now going to be compared over 12 months. So bikes, 12 months, choose the same metric. Obviously, that usually does help. And we'll click connect. Obviously, we can set up the rules then from there. And then what you'll see in this goal is, again, it's now showing me everything on a daily basis. And it's showing this all of this historical numbers, even though I just created it today. And again, this one I actually do want to set up on a monthly basis to track, which again makes it a lot more helpful for the user to kind of see what they're looking at. So I think if we refresh the page, perfect. So the last demo is going to be from a completely different report in terms of here, and then we're actually going to show what Power Automate can do. And Ed, please let me know if I'm getting too close on time as well, so I don't want to take up too much time. So there's obviously a lot. Okay.
Yeah, we're totally good. I think another, well, like my time, it's 7:22, so 7:45. So another 25 minutes or so is our schedule time. So you're good. You're good.
Perfect. Yeah. So there's obviously a lot to show. So let's click on new goal here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this just product margin. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually, let's do the, yeah. We're going to click on connect to data. Again, I can choose any report here. I'm going to choose a different report. And now in this report, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply click on Italy. And again, it's showing me, okay, the country's filter, that's Italy. I can use the drop down here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose product margin 3 months current. We'll click connect. And again, I can use that same visual and choose that other tooltip. And I'm going to do the previous month because that's already in my tooltip. So I don't have to recreate the wheel. Now, again, using those features of Power BI, I'm going to create a sub goal here. And we're going to call this Puglia, which is actually a region in Italy, not promoting anything here, but so I'm going to click on the same report. And now what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to right click and I'm going to drill down in Italy, which again shows me the regions. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to choose this particular region, the Puglia region. So the 3 months current. So again, it's showing me Italy plus the Puglia state. And again, you set that up in the same way. So some of you may be wondering as well, this is great, but also if I have more than 3 sub items, this seems very tedious, to which I would say you're absolutely correct. One of the things in the Power BI roadmap is a way to cascade hierarchies. So if you had a list of 40 BDMs for sales, basically easily create everything, I think, off of a table. So that is coming down the road. So we created a sub goal. We could obviously do that for the other ones. And what I'm going to do is go to read mode. And again, let's actually see what happens for the consumer. So when they actually look at that particular scorecard you created. So again, let's look at the bikes rolling average. I can see this. Someone goes with it, they can see where it's at. Obviously, you set the status. A good practice is when you create your goal, add a check-in note here. And what you can do is insert a note and kind of describe what that goal is showing. So that can be very helpful. And it's kind of like a tooltip to say, hey, we're tracking our products with profit. This is basically off of this, yada, yada, yada. Just a little explainer as well is a huge, huge benefit for consumers. So again, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to simply click on that report icon. And again, it's brought me to the drill through page with everything being filtered. So if I have had a bunch of filters applied before, now for the user, like everything's already right what they need to see. I'm looking at bikes. Again, you can kind of filter in a way to showcase that particular goal that you're looking at and then kind of give those explainers, but it makes it so much easier for a user who may not like drill through, because let's face it, some people, like to get people to adopt, like, hey, you can drill through and bookmarks and drill down. People want to know what to measure, what matters. So again, high level view of what's going on. And the same way with the region Puglia, it would show me that drill down. So this is all great in terms of, this is just the Power BI reports. So someone did ask, where's the data stored? So you'll actually notice that every time you create a scorecard, it actually creates a data set. So it's not really in use right now, but it does create a data set and it stores historical numbers. So if I actually looked at this scorecard, this Chicago Pug scorecard, one that I created, and I actually could say, basically, let's say create a report. There's not a lot of information here. It's basically going to just show you the goal names. Here's all my goal names. And we can basically say what the value is. So you can see the value over time. And I can even see as well the target. So it does create a data set in the workspace that you designate. So let's then kind of go into one of the things I want to showcase. So the link that I sent before was towards a Microsoft form that was asking how many people are enjoying virtual meetups, how many people have used goals. And one thing that I've been trying to gauge from the community is I greatly miss going downtown for the user groups. We used to meet once a month in the Microsoft office in Chicago, and I live in the suburbs. So it was a nice little Tuesday evening to grab a slice of pizza, be in the city. And I really do miss it. So basically, one of the research papers that I read is the best way to gauge a rating from someone is not 1 to 10. And if there's one thing you learn from today, it's not the goals. It's never ask someone 1 to 10, what do you think? It's 1 to 7. It's better than 1 to 5 and it's better than 1 to 10. This is actually, I think Google did this survey when they were doing like an NPS for like website ratings. Even though a lot of people still don't use it, I wanted to basically gauge from the community, from people at user groups, if they were willing to go back. So I basically set up in Power Automate, when anyone submits the form, I want to get the average of their rating, that 1 to 7. And if that number ever goes up to over 5, that's when I know I can probably contact Microsoft and ask, can we book a room? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the scorecard here, and you can actually see that some of you were able to submit it. Thank you so much. And you'll notice none of these data points in this report are coming from a Power BI report. Everything from here is coming from Power Automate or getting pushed into it that did not exist in any Power BI report. The responses is just simply a Power Automate that's pushing. And then how many users are loving user groups meetups. And you can see basically like it was doing great. It was at 6 and it dropped a little. Hopefully that's not when I started speaking. And then my big number here was likely to return in person. Again, I was estimating people would be around a 5 out of 7, but it's been very low for a long time because we actually did this user group, did this session at the Chicago one in the beginning of the year. So, and this hasn't gotten any better. So still ranging. And then I just want to see how many people have used goals. And it's really like 1 out of 4 people. So, and again, from how this is all set up from a user point of view, none of this is a Power BI report, but you can still look in Power BI to see what's important. The scorecard itself is actually, I think it's this guy here. So I'll just kind of show you the kind of the flow of the form. And again, a new response is submitted, create a few variables. I'm updating a SharePoint list or adding to a SharePoint list all the previous records. And then I'm doing a few things so I can get the average, not just the latest value. And then you can see here that I have all these updates to goal actions. And I basically see here, update a goal, and I can update any part of the goal. I can update from the owner to the name of the goal, to the target value, the status, the start date, and the completion date. You can update that all from one action. So that's basically what I'm doing, where I'm saying what are you loving the meetups? I'm updating this from Power Automate, and that's the only place it gets updated. It's not from any Power BI report. And again, I'm doing the same thing for how many people have used goals, and I'm updating the current and the target one here. Again, all from the same Power Automate flow. So I also have another action set up here where anytime, I think this is not it. So it should have been the email one. So yeah, so when the value ever went over 10 or over 5, I was going to send an email to myself letting me know it's time to contact Microsoft. So I don't necessarily have to look at the goal. So this is part of the triggers where I can say when the value of the goal changes. Again, I can go in here and just basically choose everything. So I can say January scorecard. And I can say basically the user is likely to return in person. And then I can set some conditions here where I can basically say, what's the current value? Do an if statement and then send myself an email. So think about in terms from that communication, that cross-platform, where anytime the number gets above something certain, someone needs to be notified. The last part of this is that kind of the full picture of, obviously, if you were to create scorecards where everyone has to go into Power BI to manually update it, might be a little difficult. So I created a Power App that basically allows like 3 projects that I'm managing, and the app is purely functionality. But you can actually create a Power App, basically a score admin portal or whatever you call it, your war room, so to speak. And basically anytime someone would update this app, and I say test, and we'll say the OC and a few numbers here, that triggers Power Automate flow. And you can actually see what not only is it updating the values, but I can actually see here that it's actually also updating it's adding a check-in, which is again another neat feature for any unique projects, where you can see that what I entered in the Power App, and again, it doesn't have to be Power Apps, it could be from any little platform where you can extract the values. I updated the number, I added a check-in based on that field, and I said basically the notes here, like basically like what the current phase we're in, the title of it, and then the note that I added. So, and that all came from the app. I didn't do any of that in Power BI. The only thing I did in Power BI was create the goal. And then everything else was happening outside of Power BI, but all the numbers are coming from that. So again, to think about having one report that would have your external data, your internal information, and data from Power BI in one place, I think that just kind of shows that really what people should be looking at. And I don't think there's any other demos here. That was Power Automate, that was the apps. And I think I had another one where if we get 75 submissions, I was going to tweet 100 times in Power automatically. So, but we're not there. So yeah, so I think the response is the latest response that came in, or was it 55? So I might have to turn that off before today. So we see we got a few updates today, and yep. So that is a simple demo of what Power BI goals can do. And again, I think we're still scratching the surface because of all the features you can use in a Power BI report to connect to. There is some, I think new thinking we have to do on how we design our reports, but yeah, that's kind of the kind of last steps is the Power Automate, I think, is a game changer here. They don't solve a problem that people have not identified. So again, this is kind of working on what are people tracking to and trying to really discover what our users are looking at. If they're exporting all the time, they're still getting a number, and trying to figure out what's important to them. So yeah, and that's all I have. So I know there's been a few things in the chat. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that as well, but hopefully I've sold you as well. So a few questions that I see here are, I think we see 4 tables. Okay, so if I can start from the top here. So yeah, so all the data stored in a Power BI data set in that workspace. The goals, what's that connection? It's not real, honestly. If let's say you change the visual or someone deleted a visual goal was created to, it does not delete all the historical data. You just have to reconnect it to anything and it will start tracking. So technically you could have a goal that's really wonky with 2 different numbers, but that's one of the things that I'm glad they actually set it up that way. So if something breaks or a report gets deleted or whatever happens, the goal itself is not necessarily dependent. It basically feeds in every day what the number is, and that's what the goal is. So if you deleted the report, it's not going to delete the goal or the value. Who can see the goals? How do you control access? So they are working on this as well. I don't think it's fully baked yet, but I'll show you. Basically, you can actually set in the manage permissions here. And you can basically say, you can basically give people roles. You can say everyone can view in the organization, which I can like remove here. And what I can do is see, view all. I want to just turn that off and set for all, which is the tenant. And then that's the default role. And what I can do here is I can basically say a new role, and I can say this is marketing only. And they basically just get these that they can view. And then you basically say a role member. So I would say basically, I basically look at your security groups. So that's really how it's set up now. So you can actually have one goal that only a few people can see the different things there. So yep.
What about licensing? Does it just follow the Power BI licensing scheme?
Yeah. So again, if you have Power BI Pro, you can use goals right now. So
But
before,
the end user would have to have pro to see the goal.
yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So goal, I believe so. Like I said, just we haven't tested that out, but again, if they don't have pro, then they're not looking at reports. So yeah. So, but yeah, I think you at least need pro for really anything in Power BI nowadays. So, any other questions?
I had a comment and a question. The comment is I tried setting up goals with a client, and it doesn't work apparently on premium if they're multi-geo.
Oh, really?
And I don't, yeah, it just, you get a white screen. It says this hasn't worked yet. I didn't know if you knew anything about that, but if you're working at a large company, you might not be able to do goals yet. My question was, how does this work with third-party visuals? It seemed like you were using a lot of standard Power BI visuals.
Yeah. So
So
that's a pretty good question. I haven't tested too much with it. Let's do a quick demo and see what that looks like. So we're gonna edit this guy. And let's just do the card was staged by OKViz. And let's just basically create a new goal. So depending on the visual, it may be all right. So I think like if you have a pretty complex visual, then it may be a little tougher. Obviously, if you use the Power Automate visual, you may run into a few problems. But actually, let me see here if I have one that I know has a lot of custom visuals. This one. Okay, so let's try this guy. So we'll basically put this here. You could clearly tell this is my sandbox, the baseball data. So we'll do here, page 4. So let's go back. Let's see. That's strange. Okay. So page 4. I mean, if you can view the data like in the tooltip, then technically you're able to connect to it. Obviously, there's a little wonky here because it's showing you all the sub values for your filtering selection, but it's really just showing you, it's displaying whatever would happen in a tooltip.
okay, cool.
So I think SCS in goals data sets, we see 4 tables. Will that data model be able to change or develop? I'm not entirely sure. I think Microsoft has a plan for the scorecard data sets. They just haven't figured out what it is yet. But obviously they create the data set as a standard data set you can connect to in a Power BI report. So I'm not entirely sure what they're going to be using it for, but yeah.
Cool. Anybody else have any questions? This has been a really good presentation. Really helpful. No one else? Last chance. All right. Tommy, I really appreciate it. We all appreciate it. It's this one client, I really want to get it on their system, but until that multi-geo's there, it's just not going to work. I'm going to play with it though.
Yeah,
Awesome
I will.
presentation.
I'll ask if, but I wouldn't, I wouldn't know why, but so again, Microsoft's been having a few server errors lately, but hopefully, let me know how it goes. And with getting people adopted to it, because again, it's definitely, it's a different way of thinking. So
Yeah. But yeah, I tend to agree with what you said that Chuck said. Get rid of dashboards. The goals would be a much better replacement for that feature.
mhm. Awesome.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm
Thanks,
going
Tommy.
to stop recording.